It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, as well as the mobile app. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways to interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also hit us up on Twitter, hashtag GiantsChat. You can also directly interact with the two of us. He's at GiantsWFAN. I'm at Lance Medow, one word last name, Medow. And as a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcasts. As we welcome you into the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. So a lot on the agenda today. On Wednesday's show, John and Matt gave their breakdown of the NFC East by positional group. So it's our turn. Paul and I will do the same. We'll rank accordingly. Pearson will carefully add up the tallies, and we'll make sure that we make no mistakes, that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and he reports back to the higher-ups. But in addition to that...
this will maximize the humor after the season.
Without a doubt.
Is what it will do.
Well, because all of us clearly, at the end of the season, the first thing we do is we drop everything, and then we go and run back to the rankings to see how accurate the assessments were. We're giving away state secrets here on the program today. Yes. And then if time allows, Paul and I would also like to weigh in on a few takeaways from the press conferences yesterday, as Brendan Brown and a few of the coaches as well as the players spoke to the media in the midst of OTAs. All right, Paul, let's delve into our breakdown of the NFC East. And for those that are completely lost, just a quick breakdown and review. We're going to go 4 through 1. Highest team that we feel the most confident in gets a 4. The lowest team gets a 1. We're going to do quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line on offense. We're going to do defensive tackle, edge, interior linebacker, cornerback, safety on defense, special teams as an entire unit, and then the coaching staff as well. So the whole enchilada and then some, with some toppings on the side or on top of it, as I throw in the food analogies, because Paul Dottino clearly loves to rub off on me.
I was curious, why do we not have press box food also as one of the categories?
Well, you know what? Hey, the afternoon is young, as they say, Paul.
Radio booth location.
Okay, hey, we can throw that in too. I don't know if the listeners, viewers, and fans care at the end of the day about that, but we'll leave no stone unturned. All right, you know what? I want to go backwards because I'm sure they led off with the meat and potatoes of quarterback. Let's work our way up towards the quarterback. You okay with that?
Yeah, whatever you like
let's mix it up. So let's start with coaching staff as the first go-around here. And I will allow you to start the dialogue in terms of how you broke down this category.
Well, I did it as head coach. I didn't do it as coaching staff. Did I see the category wrong?
Well, coaching staff, my interpretation is I'm going to take into consideration the OC, the DC changes.
I didn't do that.
Well, listen, I think you can operate on the fly. I have full confidence in you, Paul. The entire production team is pulling for you behind the scenes.
Well, as you know, Dallas has had changes.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's a very accurate assessment on your part.
Washington, and the Giants, not so much. So I actually went with, as much as I hate to say this, I'm simply going off of track record.
Okay.
Philadelphia, Sirianni, no matter who he's had underneath him, has been able to become a big winner with the Eagles. So I suggest that he has to be number one, and his staff. I suggest Washington with Dan Quinn, who has had multiple playoff seasons across a career that also had other stops. But clearly what he did this past season was remarkable with a Commanders team that all of us had picked last in the division.
Sure.
So I think you have to go there. Brian Daboll has been a coach of the year and gone to the playoffs in his short 3-year stint as a head coach. So I went with him at number 3 and his folks. And then number 4 has got to be Brian Schottenheimer because, let's face it, this is his first head coaching job. And I have absolutely no idea how he's going to do in Dallas. So I went with him 4th.
I was identical to you. Eagles 4, Commanders 3, Giants 2, Cowboys 1. Washington continuity, so that bodes very well for them.
Sure.
None of the coordinators changed under Dan Quinn. Cliff Kingsbury still in the fold. Philadelphia did lose Kellen Moore, but they promoted from within. And let's face it, Sirianni has a great deal of influence on the ins and outs of the offense.
Yes.
So that doesn't concern me. And the roster, even on the offensive side of the ball, is staying intact. The Giants, of course, are bringing back the unit as well. Dallas has had the most change. So Dallas has the most land of the unknown compared to the other teams. Now, Schottenheimer, in fairness, has been running the offense in conjunction with Mike McCarthy, but to your point, it's the first time he's the head coach. And when you're the head coach, you're not just running the offense, you're running an entire team. Matt Eberflus is a polished defensive coordinator who was previously in Dallas, and his teams have been very good with takeaways. So I'm not poo-pooing their coaching staff, but if we're going to be fair and say proven track record versus newness, it's hard to elevate Dallas over the other three teams.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, and we're not allowed in this particular exercise to give Dallas an incomplete, you could. Because we just don't know. We just don't have we don't have enough of a gauge as to what Schottenheimer's going to be as the lead guy.
The grades are in. The off-season, okay, or intercession, however you want to word it, the summer, okay. The regents, the dean's office has made it clear there are no incompletes in terms of this assignment.
Yes.
Okay, so we see coaching staff identical.
Yes.
Pearson, I'm assuming you're keeping tally, and we're not going too fast for you. Okay, just want to make sure. Once again, all right, let's move now to special teams. So special teams encompasses everything. The kicking game, the return game, coverage, you name it. So the way that I looked at it is, and I think this could go in a variety of different ways, but my order was I went Dallas 4, Eagles 3, Commanders 2, Giants 1. And the rationale behind my order was, first of all, Dallas has the best kicking game in the division. I don't think there's anyone better than Brandon Aubrey. And if you disagree, that's fine, Paul, but he has the best leg and the greatest form of efficiency.
Among the top in the league.
Sure. So that, I think, boded very well for Dallas when I was evaluating this. They also have one of the best return men in the NFL in Kevontae Turpin. So he's still in the fold. Blazing speed. Can take the ball anywhere he wants. You give him a hole, you give him an inch, he's going to go a mile. And overall, I think their coverage teams have been solid enough. I'm not saying that they don't have any issues, but there are no glaring major problems, I guess, is what I'm looking at it from that standpoint. Then, if you look at Philadelphia, the Eagles, I give the benefit of the doubt because of their track record. The Eagles have had a really good special teams unit. I mean, you go back decades, really, with the Eagles, but if you're looking at personnel-wise, at least, there are some changes in terms of their return game, but Jake Elliott, who did have a down year, has been mostly solid over the course of his career. So I think that the chances of him regrouping and bouncing back is certainly something that's a positive for Philadelphia. Washington has arguably the best punter in the division in Tress Way. I mean, Anger's not too shabby for Dallas. And I think Luke McCaffrey and Austin Eckler provide a nice 1-2 punch in terms of the return game. And we know based on the Giants, while Graham Gano did better, I think, towards the latter part of last season, and hopefully full health will help his cause and experience.
Well, Gabriel said yesterday he looked like himself again.
He did. But, you know,
he's on, he's as good as anybody.
Without a doubt. But there have been some ups and downs in recent years and some injury concerns. Jamie Gillen is still in the mix, so there's continuity from that standpoint. But I still think the jury is out, I would argue, with respect to the coverage unit. And maybe that's my biggest concern more so than anything else in the division.
Okay, understood. I went with projection, not with what happened in 2024 in terms of this, which is why the Giants are number one with me. They are the top dog. They have the best special teams overall in the division, I believe. I'm counting on Gano, who did show well, like he was himself at the end of last season. He's had a good spring. Gillen had the best year of his career as a punter. Smith-Marset looks like he is a terrific return guy. I am a huge, huge fan. And signing Board off of the Ravens, who was the number one kick coverage guy in free agency. In fact, Gabriel said yesterday, the last 5 years, he's been in the top 5 of special teams tackles every year. He is a dominant special teams force. I believe this is the year, and I've been saying this on the program for 2 months, since free agency started, the Giants signed more than just one. They got like 3 special teams guys they signed in free agency. They intend on being one of the best special teams units across the board in football. They intend on winning that third of the game every single week. And that's a starting point for them to get back to respectability. Because if you can win special teams every Sunday and win most of your games defensively, well, then your offense can lag along but just be good enough to be competitive. So I think that's their plan. I believe in the plan. Giants, best special teams in 2025, not 2024. You look at it last year.
Sure. Well, I'm looking at track record, too.
I'm not going to go off track record as much as I'm going to go for what I see in the plan. I go Giants. I go Philadelphia because they have a more balanced special teams than the Cowboys do. The Cowboys have a great kicker and a great punter. The return guy's dangerous, but their coverage units, my goodness, you're talking about pigsty coverage units. They are brutal when it comes to covering punts and covering kicks. And unless that changes, and I don't see how, again, we're not around these other teams. We don't know specifically about what they're doing with certain personnel and who they're going to change. But until they get their coverage units squared away, they're really, really bad. And bad enough that the imbalance makes me pick them third and Washington last. Also, very bad coverage units in Washington.
Well, a few of these teams, this is why it's hard with the projection, because the rookies could play a prominent role on special teams, and you just don't know at this point.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
So while I'm projecting with the Giants, that's because I'm here, and I know what I think they want to do and who they're going to use and how it's going to be planned out. I know what they're planning. I know they're counting on special teams being awesome this year. They really are. And I'm sorry, but I'm buying in.
Well, I will say this, and this adds to what you were laying out. I think of all 4 teams in the division, the Giants need their special teams to deliver more so than the other 3 squads.
It's a key part of their turnaround. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to mean this team struggles more than they want them to.
Because even with the upgraded quarterback, once again, you and I have had a lot of conversations. You can't assume they're going to score a touchdown more than they did last season. Okay,
that's crazy.
There's got to be a little bit more middle ground. So how do you make up for it?
4 points a game on the average would be considered an achievement,
and that would get them to that 20-point ballpark,
right?
Because of where they've been the last few seasons.
I'd love to see them at 23, but that's a lot.
I would agree with you. Listen, I've said that multiple years. It's not just going into this season. I've said it multiple times. The track record doesn't show that. So they do need to show consistency and vast improvement on that side of the ball. And it even goes back to, I'm glad you brought up what Gabriel, the special teams coach, had talked about. He even mentioned, he was asked about the tweaks to the new kickoff rule and where the touchback's going to be on the 35. And he had said, based on the analytical studies, when you get 5 yards improvement in starting field position, specifically when you go from the 30 to 35, the chances of scoring go up to about 80%, was the number he threw out. And that should not be taken lightly.
No.
Especially for the sake of the Giants.
The Giants know that one of the quickest ways for them to get back to respectability is to win field position. They understand that.
Yeah.
And what's the quickest way to gain field position? To dominate on special teams. Look, I've been talking about this for 2-3 months, folks. Actually, probably 2 months. So I'm sorry, but that's what I'm basing this on. It's strictly a projection because I'm buying in to what they're selling on this one.
All right, let's now move to the defensive individual categories, safety position. And I'll let you start things off here, Paul.
I went with the top team in the division, Giants. I like Nubin very much. I like Holland very much. And Belton's having a good spring. You know, we keep talking about how he's the third guy and can't crack the top 2. Well, if he's still the third guy, he can be a really good third guy. There's nothing wrong with being a really great number 3 safety on a team. I went Giants. I went Philadelphia. It was hard to do because I honestly don't think it's a good safety division. In my opinion,
I'd actually go the opposite way. I think
right.
a few of these teams have some substance, but go ahead.
But I went Philly second, Dallas third, and Washington fourth. But I'm not a fan of the safeties in this division.
Well, there's no doubt Holland is the most attractive boost to any of the units. But as good as Newbin has shown flash-wise, still a bit of an unproven commodity in terms of what he could do. See, this is why I do put stock into what have you done over the last years. Dallas, to me, has the most experience, Paul, at that position, right? Between Wilson and Hooker. Yeah. And they've been together. So
Wilson's performance has slipped, though.
He has, but when he's healthy, Wilson, you could argue, is maybe the best safety in this division. I think he's been very, very solid.
He's got to turn back the clock about 3 years, though.
Well, he's not an old man where you got to get the cane and the
he has been
other
sliding
elements out. Well, but I think part of it has been just the injury toll and the wear and tear. But when he's healthy, I still think he performs at a high level. So I'm not willing to dismiss that. And then Philadelphia, Reed Blankenship has been one of the great stories at safety in this division.
He's an overachiever, and he's part of the system. I think they hide him back there. As an individual player, he is not nearly what people think he is.
Well, but remember, he's not operating out on an island.
No,
he's operating in Vic Fangio's system.
But we are.
Well,
We're
but
asked about safety. We're not asked about the secondary. We're asked about a safety.
No, but you're also operating with how they're utilized within the defensive structure, too, though. That's how I look at it.
I wasn't asked that.
Well, that's how I mean, once again, this exercise is different because everybody interprets it in varied ways. But I look at it as how effective are the players within the scheme, because this is not quarterback against safety one-on-one.
All right. See,
so I'm going to look at it from that standpoint.
To be fair, when John listed this for us, I was thinking, okay, you have the opportunity to take guys at this position.
Oh, sure.
Who would you take?
I get that. Yeah.
Blankenship I would never take Blankenship. Of all the safeties in this division, he would definitely not be anywhere near the top for me. And now, you're talking about how does he melt into the scheme and the system? The guy's been very productive, although his production's gone down in each of the last 3 seasons too. But I understand your point. See, we're coming at it from a different angle, so therefore the rationales that we use are going to be totally incongruent, and we'll have some very large variations.
Yeah, which is fine. Listen, it makes for a good conversation, and the division is vast, and there's many different perspectives. Sidney Brown is their other safety, who's another player that I think, given what they've gotten in the draft, remember, this is really good bang for the buck. So Dallas, Philadelphia, the Giants, and then I'm with you. The Commanders, I think, have the biggest question mark of all teams at that position, because you've got Quan Martin, who's one of the projected starters, second-round pick in 2023, Will Harris, who they bring over from New Orleans. So you're looking at one new guy, one guy that hasn't necessarily proven that he's going to be a game-changing player. I think the other 3 teams, there is a higher level of confidence. So that was what I took into consideration in terms of my rankings from that standpoint. All right, let's go over to the cornerback position, which is next on the list. And I'll start off the dialogue here. For cornerback, I started with the Eagles at number 1. And this is very similar to my thinking in terms of the safety position. You've got Quinyon Mitchell, their first-round pick from last year, then Cooper DeJean, who's their second-round pick, the nickelback, who also can be moved around in this defense. I mean, both of those guys, Paul, have been really solid. I mean, maybe Ringo, hasn't been as good perhaps as the other two, but as a group. And let's not forget, you got Adoree Jackson, who you brought in as a complimentary cornerback. I think you could do a lot worse than that group. So I elevated Philadelphia for that reason. I have Dallas number 2. You've got Trayvon Diggs, and Deron Bland is probably one of the most underrated corners. Remember, a few years ago, he led the NFL in interception returns for touchdowns. Kaiir Elam, they're hoping bounces back, the former first-round pick from Buffalo, so far from a proven commodity. And then they have some youth behind that. Then I had the Giants as 3rd on the list because, once again, you've got young guys, but you like what they brought in with Paulson Adebo. But once again, the jury is still out in terms of, can the younger guys as a unit complement the veterans? Can Deonte Banks have a strong bounce-back season? And once again, the Commanders, I think, similar to the safety position, it just goes to show you what we think of their secondary overall. You like Lattimore, who they made the acquisition for at the trade deadline, but, he was hurt, and we have yet to see a full season of his operation in Dan Quinn's defense. So once again, I'm looking at how the player fits into the system. Sandra Still is a young up-and-coming player, and then they brought in Jonathan Jones from New England, who's a veteran player, but again, how's he going to fit into this defense? So far more question marks for Washington than anybody else.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We're pretty close here. I do think this was a lot closer for me than the safety spot.
Okay.
I did go Philadelphia. I don't know how we can't go with Philadelphia. I mean, the two corners they drafted last year, just oh man, it's criminal. It's criminal how they got both of those guys. So I went Philly, I went Giants, I went Dallas, I went Washington. Now, that's because I'm a big believer in Tay Banks. You guys know that. Again, this is projection, how I see the guy playing in 2025. I think we'll see more of a real Tay Banks as opposed to what we saw last year when he had trouble with the system. So if he plays more like he did as a rookie, and I have looked at a lot of tape on Adebo, he is some kind of player. And I also know someone with the Saints staff who has given me some really good intel. They were really, really not happy to lose him, but they knew they couldn't afford him. And so he gets away, so he comes here. And I'm a huge Drew Phillips fan. Everybody knows that. So between those three guys, I'm going to give them the lead because I'm not big on Elam, who comes over from Buffalo for Dallas. So while Bland and Diggs have big numbers and they make splash plays, they also gamble a lot. And I'm not sold on Elam. So I'll go Giants number 2, Dallas 3, and Washington clearly in the rear.
Well, before Adebo got hurt, he was a ball hawk. So Giants are hoping that, as Shane Bowen, who spoke to the media
he looks
yesterday,
great out here now.
Well over the leg injury.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's
physically, no residue.
Sure. But, I think a lot of the Giants' potential that you were going at is, will these guys be more opportunistic this season, Paul? That's the question.
Well, the two Dallas guys are certainly...
They've proven that they could do that.
They get interceptions.
Yep, and Eberflus's system is very high on takeaways, even going back to when he was with the Colts.
That's why, for me, they get the edge with those two over the Giants two, but then when we go to Drew Phillips against Elam as the third corner in the 3-corner package, not necessarily the position they're playing, but in terms of 1, 2, 3, CB3, I'm big on Drew Phillips over Elam. And I'm not so sure that the gap in 1 and 2 isn't more a stat gap as opposed to a performance gap. I think the interception numbers for the two Dallas guys clearly dwarfs what the Giants.
Oh, it's night and day.
Get.
Yeah, sure, from a career standpoint.
But from a playing on the field perspective, well, we're not playing fantasy football here. We're playing real football. I'm not so sure that the gap is as wide as maybe somebody might think.
That's fair. I think the difference to me and the reason why I put Dallas over the Giants was experience. Diggs and Bland do have a lot more experience.
They do.
Than even if you take Adebo out of the equation, you're just looking at those two against Banks and Phillips. Mm-hmm. And there's a wealth of game experience.
Sure.
And I think clearly that helps when it comes to evaluating positions and looking at performance. Okay, so that is the breakdown of the secondary. Let's move up the ladder, and I'll have you start things off with inside linebacker, which has been a very interesting conversation, even here in Giants land for us this offseason.
Yeah, part of the problem here is that I view Abdul Carter as both a inside linebacker because I think he's going to play some of that, and he's also going to play some edge. So because he plays both, I couldn't separate the units. I can't just list him as an edge. I can't. So given that, I'm saying to myself, between McFadden, Okereke, and Carter, I'm going Giants 1. No, I went Philly 1. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had Philly 1.
Gotcha.
I had Giants 2, Washington 3, and Dallas 4. Now, the problem with that is if I give Carter the flexibility to move in and out, I got to give it to Parsons.
Yeah, that's why, for this exercise, I avoided having those tweeners. I just kept them as edge guys.
It makes it really, really rough. Now, I guess you know what? Bobby Wagner is getting really old. He keeps doing it.
Oh, man, does he ever.
You know what? Oh,
we're having a change on the fly here. By the way, Frankie Luvo's not a bad player.
No,
too.
he's not.
Forget. I think the combination of those two gets
all right. I'm still gonna go Philly, Giants, Washington, Dallas. I'll still go that way, even though Parsons does play some inside. I'm sorry, Micah, you're 4th.
Okay, well, I was somewhat in your ballpark. I went Eagles first. I just flip-flopped the Commanders and the Giants. I have Commanders 2, Giants 3, and Cowboys last. I'll start. The reason why Dallas is last is, there is major concern on the interior. First of all, they're banking on Kenneth Murray Jr., who they brought up from Tennessee, who's had some real major problems panning out. And then DeMarvion Overshawn, who's a really good player, unfortunately got hurt late last season.
I know.
So we don't know the exact timeline of when he's going to return.
Yeah, but we saw what he does against the Giants.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So the injury to him and then Murray.
That's why I hesitated a little, because you put Parsons in there too now.
No, of course. So I did not include Parsons. That's why, to me, the level of separation was not challenging from that standpoint. Washington's got 2 veterans. Now, as you mentioned, is this going to be the year where Wagner starts to show signs of slowing down?
Just retire already.
But, I mean, the man has been remarkable. And
remember London Fletcher?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Former Rams linebacker.
And
Washington, too. Yeah, sure.
He was around forever.
Yeah, these guys, they take great care of their body. They're a good fit for the defense. You know, it's not as if they're asking him to do 17 other things. Hey, man the middle, jump through those holes, clean it up, and Luvo, and both of them are also, they're athletic. So the versatility is something that I did not dismiss. Okereke, I think, has bounce back season written all over him.
Yeah.
So I'm with you there. But, you know, outside of Okereke, I still wonder what is going to come from this group. You know, Muasau was a rookie last year. We saw some flashes late. Deontay Johnson, undrafted guy, and Micah McFadden, who's been in the system. But, you know, how much is he going to be on the field? Okereke right now is the one guy I know they're going to put him out on the field. But outside of that, a little bit of a guessing game. So that's why Washington's proof with the veterans gave them the edge over the Giants, and that was my reasoning.
Okay.
And here's the thing, for Philadelphia, no matter what you think of all of the other guys at the position, because in fairness, Nakobe Dean is also coming off an injury.
Yes.
And we don't know, but I don't think it's as bad as the Overshawn situation. So I think bodes better for him to return. And Zach Bond was an all-pro. What a signing for Philadelphia. I mean, you could argue Bond is the best, based on last season's performance, Zach Bond is the best returning inside linebacker in the division. So that clearly gives Philadelphia an edge.
Wasn't he a Pro Bowl, or was he an all-pro choice last year?
Oh, he was, I think, both.
I think he might have been.
Bond was both.
So
I'll look it up to confirm.
You don't have
sure
to
he was
restrict that to the division. Based on strictly last year's performance, he was one of the top middle linebackers or inside backers in football.
Sure, but
Never
I guess
mind the East.
100%. I'm just looking at it within the confines of the NFC East, and he was first team All-Pro and Pro Bowler last season.
So, you know, they have to be the top. No matter what you and I say about anybody else, they got to be number one in that spot.
Sure. Okay. So now we go to edge, where we know Abdul Carter fits in for the Giants and Micah Parsons for the Cowboys.
That's for sure.
So depth is a big thing for me. The Giants blow everybody away in the depth department at this position. So the Giants are number one because of the returners at that spot and what they're adding in Abdul Carter. I mean, you feel really good with respect to who they're going to mix and match. And just like Philadelphia got a lot of credit right over the years for a rotational group, well, then you have to project Shane Bowen should have the same luxury with the Giants. Now, we don't have a crystal ball. You never wish injury upon anybody. But going into the season, I think the Giants bring more punch than anybody else at that spot, because you're looking at the usage of Carter, Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Chauncey Golston, who you know I'm very high on. I don't think that free agent signing gets talked enough about because he sort of falls under the radar with some of the other big splashes.
I like him more as a defensive end myself than I do as a linebacker myself.
Well, remember, this is the edge conversation, so you could throw in everybody as you wish. But Golston was a very solid, experienced pass rusher for the Cowboys. So actually, you could argue you really killed two birds with one stone with that signing.
You
took him away from Dallas.
I know.
And you added him to the mix. So actually, that's another way to look at why I'm very high on that addition. So no matter how you want to spin it, no matter how you want to order these guys, the Giants, hand down, are number one. Number two in this category for me went to Dallas because eventually the individuals are going to separate the men from the boys. And Micah Parsons is one of the best individualized edge rushers in the division. Now, Dallas did lose Golston, but they brought back Dante Fowler from Washington, who was with them previously.
Yes.
So there's that familiarity. And I actually, one of the guys that you could argue could be utilized inside and outside. And I know I factored in more for defensive tackle, but Solomon Thomas, who's been utilized as a guy that could get after the quarterback, I think they'll move him around. And they added him from the Jets, the former San Francisco 49er. And Peyton Turner adds more length from New Orleans. So I think some of the veterans the Cowboys added can help with that rotation. Maybe this doesn't get talked enough about. Philadelphia took a really big hit at this position. I don't know, Paul, if that has been discussed enough. I have Philadelphia last, and I have the Commanders ahead of the Eagles. That's how I rounded out the group, because with Philadelphia, I'm a little bit concerned outside of Nolan Smith. Josh Uche was a nice addition, and he may actually pick up where he left off at Kansas City. But outside of those two guys, I don't know. And Carter and Davis are the defensive tackles, okay?
Yes.
So I'm looking at them under that umbrella. I think Philadelphia's got a lot to prove. And you may be high on some of these other young guys that they brought into the mix, but I'll bank on Washington and what they're bringing back to the table more so than Philadelphia.
Aren't you forgetting the Eagles signed Ojulari?
Well, it's funny. You and I had a conversation, I think it was last week, about that.
I know.
But once again, new to the system. I think Washington, with their defense, Witt is still their DC. I'm going to give them the edge over, yes, talent is nice, but how are they going to utilize him?
And can he stay on the field?
And can he stay, of course, from a durability standpoint. So that concerns me for Philly.
And that's fair. I went Giants, Dallas. I did go Philadelphia over Washington because of Ojulari. But, again, there's not much to argue about in the top two. I mean, come on. Those are pretty clear.
Well, let me ask you this, just because you got me thinking. If I were to say I'm going to give you a mixture of veteran Dorrance Armstrong, who is going to have to pick up the slack for some of the losses for Washington, Dietrich Wise, who they brought over from New England, then Cleveland Ferrell, who's been with a few teams.
Terrible disappointment.
Yeah, clearly has not lived up to expectations. No doubt about that. If I were to offer you that mix versus Smith, Ojulari, and what the Eagles have, and once again, you could throw Josh Uche. You like the Philadelphia group more? Okay, no, that's fair. That's fair. I'm not going to, listen, we're splitting hairs here over this conversation.
And as I said to Lance before the program, I said, this is not one where I'm going to try to sell you or convince you, because I don't have concrete posts 50 feet into the ground on any of these choices. I just don't. I mean, it's such a hypothetical that I don't feel that way. It's not worth arguing about like I feel about the tush push. I feel very strongly about that. I don't know if you do. This is not the forum for it. But that I will argue for from here till 2029 if I have to. But that's not what this is about.
I will say this. The more and more I'm thinking and going back and forth with you, if we were just going upside, I'd say I like the Eagles' edge rusher upside more than Washington. But you're banking on Ojulari staying healthy, and you're banking on Uche in a new system delivering to the degree that he did last season. And I just think that's a lot to ask for without seeing it versus what Washington is inheriting. So that's once again why I'm still giving the Commanders. It's a slight edge. It's minute, but that's how we have to go in terms of breaking the ins and outs. All right, defensive tackle. What do you got on that front?
Defensive tackle. I went Philadelphia, Giants, Washington, and Dallas. The easy one is Dallas. You actually start by going backwards here because Dallas just does not have the upfront power to deal with a good rushing attack or even getting a push in the front of the pocket. They just don't have it. So that's easy. You pick them 4 right away, and then you have to sort through the other 3. And this is where it gets really, really hard. I mean, I think you are like basically using a thin piece of spaghetti, trying to piece these teams separately. I think it's extremely hard, this one. But I went again, Philadelphia, Giants, Washington, Dallas.
So I just flip-flopped Dallas and Washington. I have Philly first, the Giants second. The reason why I put Dallas over Washington is Mozzie Smith needs to show some elevation this season.
Boy,
there's no doubt about that.
He let them down big time.
I'm not disputing that. But I think Osa Odighizuwa is a solid player. And once again, Solomon Thomas, bringing him over, gives me a little bit more confidence in their rotation versus Washington, which still has Daron Payne. But remember, all of his friends are gone because they've parted ways.
Yes.
Javon Kinlaw has been hit or miss over the course of his career. He was with the Jets last season.
I don't know how much more Thomas has left, though. To me, Kinlaw and Thomas are both kind of sketchy a little. Neither one of those guys is guaranteed to give you the kind of year that you need.
I just feel, I guess, Washington's philosophy was more of, let's just group a bunch of guys together who are veterans and hope for the best.
Okay.
Because, Eddie Goldman, who was with the Bears and the Falcons.
Sure.
Then Newton, who was a drafted rookie a few years ago. He was their second-round pick in 2024. And then you look at even a guy like Sheldon Day. They're just, it's like, hey, put the numbers together. It looks attractive. I don't know if there's a lot of substance in that group. I think there's more substance with respect to Dallas. And Philadelphia by far has the best 1-2 punch, okay? Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Yeah. Dexter Lawrence may be the best individualized.
Yes.
But I think the compliments in Philadelphia make it stronger than the Giants.
I agree.
So that's at least how I see
in another year or two,
position.
You may feel differently, and maybe I will, because
because
Darius Alexander is that good. They
No
could
doubt.
be the number one duo.
And once again, the potential when we have this dialogue a few years now, but we're thinking about 2025, what Carter has brought to the table and what Davis has presented, it goes without saying. You know exactly what you're getting out of those two guys. And what also makes them attractive, and Davis's sack numbers are not overwhelming, but they can get to the quarterback with ease, those two. It's not just necessarily stopping the run. They collapse the pocket and make the quarterback think. So the diversity at that position, I think, adds a layer of danger. Okay, let's now move to the offense since we completed the individualized defensive positions, and we'll start with the offensive line. And Philadelphia has had the best track record over the course of the last few years. I don't see much changing there, so I kept them as one. I'm looking over that group, and I'm saying to myself, is there a massive hole? Is there a massive void that is concerning? Right guard, perhaps, you could argue, but, they've mixed and matched a few guys at that position over the last few years. Everybody else, it's business as usual.
I know.
Right? Mailata, Dickerson, Juergens, and Johnson as I go left to right.
If I could just, wave a magic wand and blow up that unit, that would make life so much better for everybody in the division.
I don't know if I'd go to that degree, but yes, something tells me they wouldn't cry if the Eagles lose some personnel. But here's the thing. When you draft well, you don't all of a sudden drop down after you may lose a free agent or two, and that's why Philadelphia has been so consistent. It's also why the Cowboys have been consistent, but actually this is the year where Dallas again has a few more question marks. So
could Lane Johnson just retire too? Just go away. You're done. You've played enough.
The Bobby Wagner of offensive linemen
just go
in this
away.
division. Sure. So Philadelphia, I've got one. Then I have the Commanders too. I think Washington really made some strides last season and may not get enough credit because they went out, if you recall, and they revamped that group. And they're further doing that this season, Paul, because they brought in Laramie Tunzel
and
left tackle. Correct. So you got Allegretti and Biotish, they brought over from Dallas, who was solid at the center position. Cosme's still in the mix. Andrew Wiley, who they could utilize. I really like what Washington did last season, and I think part of it also is the coaching and Dan Quinn's vision and Adam Peters at general manager. So I've got Washington number 2. I've got the Giants 3. I think improvement was shown last season with the group. The group's coming back, which is good. We'll see Evan Neal moving to guard, how that pans out, but that adds perhaps at least somewhat of a question mark. And by the way, Brendan Brown was asked about that, as well as we saw multiple individuals on the coaching staff. And, it's a question mark of, while we're on the topic, can a 6'6" guy, because he said he wasn't 6'7" when the question was posed, can the problem with tall guys is, Paul, as we've talked about, when they got to bend down, does that take away their power? So I think that's the issue with Evan Neal. How well does he adjust to, he doesn't have to cover a lot of territory, which is great, but the positioning, the footwork, the hands, by being in that tall position normally and now having to adjust, how much does that take away from the strength of what he brings to the
hands,
table?
bend, and balance. Those are the 3 things that absolutely have to get up to snuff if he's going to make the conversion.
So that is a bit of a wild card at this point. And Dallas, it's a youth movement, and they've had a great track record in drafting guys, but you got to see more out of this group. Tyler Booker was a first-rounder this year, okay, hasn't played a snap. Cooper Beebe was a third-rounder last year. Tyler Guyton was a first-round pick also in 24. Tyler Smith is by far their best offensive lineman, and Terrence Steele has been a solid veteran. He's had some ups and downs, but I think you feel good about Smith and Steele. The three others, what do they bring to the table? So there is a lot of youngsters that are in the mix. Now, this group's got maybe more upside than everybody else, I would argue, in the division because of where they were drafted, but that upside alone does not leapfrog everybody else in the division.
Okay, the first two go without any explanation. I'm with you 100%. Philadelphia and Washington, especially with Tunzel going to Washington now.
Yep.
Man, oh man, why do all the teams in the division have to have a better offensive line than the Giants? Because that's where I disagree with you. I've got Philly, Washington, Dallas, and the Giants. Call me beaten down because of what's happened over the years here, but I'm in show-me phase. While I believe in the Giants' special teams game plan, I totally believe, based on who they have and what their plan is, I'm all in on that. I don't feel the same way about the offensive line. I think it will be better than it has been, but to your point, I think Dallas's offensive line has more upside than the Giants' offensive line does. Whether or not the Giants play as well as Dallas is this year, that certainly could be. Certainly could be. So I think it's kind of close in terms of what their production might be, but because Dallas has more upside, I like their chances of playing better than the Giants will. I'm going to go Dallas 3 and the Giants 4. I'm in show-me phase, folks. As far as that unit, I've got to see it.
Sure. And once again, this is why this conversation is interesting, because we all look at it differently and we all rank it as a result of our thinking. That's why I like this exercise from that standpoint. Okay, from the offensive line, we go to the tight end position. How do you see that in terms of the four teams?
Well, this is really interesting for me because depth is a big part of this one for me. Whether or not you keep 3, or some people are still suggesting maybe you try to find a way to keep 4. Look, I'll say this. Tight ends for me has to be Giants, Washington, Dallas, and Philadelphia in that order. I don't think anybody in this division has the depth or pure raw talent that the Giants have at tight end. Between Johnson, Bellinger, Fedoni, who is starting to really show me something this spring. We know they've got Dulcich. We know they've got Manhertz. I'm just like, wow. They've got so many different angles and ways they can go to cut that tight end position when they get to the 53. It's a great problem to have. I look at the other tight ends in this division, and, I'm sorry. I'm a huge Jake Ferguson fan, but his production does not have the upside or the potential this year, I believe, that the other tight ends have in the division, and I don't like what they have behind him. Ertz is another one of those guys, he's older than dirt and, had a big comeback year last year, but I'm not so sure he's got a whole lot left in the tank. And everybody knows I like Sinnott, but he's a versatile guy, but not a lead tight end for anybody. And obviously Goddard, well, he's done some things against the Giants over the years, but let's not confuse him with any All-Pros. And I don't like what they have behind him. I think it's pretty simple. The Giants dominate the tight end category for me here, and I went with, again, Washington, Dallas, and Philly in that order afterwards.
Well, it's funny because it's similar to how I look at the Cowboys' offensive line. I think the Giants may have the most upside, but not a lot of proof in that upside yet. So actually, that's why I had really the opposite of you. I think if you were to ask me the best 1-2 punch in the division, I think it's Jake Ferguson and Luke Schoonmaker. I think those are the top 2.
I'm a huge Ferguson guy, and I don't even see it that way.
Well, I think Ferguson, you can make a case. You're going to tell me you don't think you can make a case that Ferguson is the best individual tight end in the NFC East?
I'm a big Ferguson fan, but again, we're talking not about 24, we're talking about 25.
Well, I'll even go into 25. I mean, Paul, if you look at Ferguson's not an old man.
I think
no. Right?
He's only been in the league 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about
I think everything that we know about Theo Johnson, he's going to be just dynamite this year for the Giants. I think he's going to be really, really good. And do not sleep on Daniel Bellinger. Do not. He if you consider him tight end 1A on the Giants, he's certainly better than anybody else in this division. Who would be either their 1A or their 2. He's certainly better than any of those people.
Well, it's interesting you phrased it that way. I guess this is the other thing that is a little bit of the unknown with the Giants tight ends. How does Russell Wilson lean on that position?
This goes back to that scheme thing you said before.
Correct.
About how do they fit.
Well, and that was what I took into consideration,
If I'm just looking at the tight end shelf and I'm picking guys, I want the Giants tight ends.
No, and I get that. And once again, you're not wrong, Paul, for how you're looking at it. But
neither are you.
No, well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying for our audience to understand how we're looking at it, this is why you have to take a lot of these items into consideration. Yes. Because Russ, is he going to give Daniel Bellinger, I'm just going down a hypothetical road, is he going to give him enough substantive targets to say you're getting a lot out of the reps that he's going to see? Same thing with Theo Johnson. How much is Russ going to lean on Theo?
I know.
Right,
I get it.
If you go back to, I'm just going through Russ's career, even when he was with Seattle, Russ wasn't a big tight end guy.
No.
Right? He leaned a lot more on his wide receivers and his running backs.
He did.
It's going to be fascinating to see how much he throws the ball
production
his
for
way.
me, this is why I hate fantasy football, though. Because production is not all about the fantasy football stat line.
No, it's what you do without the ball in your hands, too.
Right.
Without a doubt.
And
sure.
I am a big proponent for, the Giants saying, all right, if, we could use Theo Johnson as a decoy, or we can use Bellinger in a 2 tight end set. And look, I still have faith in him, even though he's been banged up and he was certainly inconsistent last year. I still have faith in him that with this improved running game, especially in short yardage, when they get down to the goal line, Bellinger's going to be in there in a double tight end set. And I have faith that he's going to be able to block the way for Scatterboo or Tracy.
No, and I get that. And if these guys also perform well from a blocking standpoint, I think that would also help elevate the overall play of the offensive line, too.
No doubt.
Those things go hand in hand. But getting back to the topic, so that's why I'm just explaining the reason why I had the opposite of you in terms of the Giants ranking is because of Russell at the controls, how he leans on the tight ends, how much they're involved. There's so much guessing. So I have Cowboys 1, I have Eagles 2, Commanders 3, Giants 4. I'm with you. Zach Ertz is concerning about his age, but here's why. Ertz already played with Jaden Daniels. There's comfort. We saw Jaden leaned on Zach Ertz last season. Yeah. He did. He used him as an outlet.
They also got Debo now.
Correct. So that may
they could throw the ball around to other places.
But I don't think he's going to completely abandon him. And Goddard has been with Jalen. He's been in this system. And the other guy, and I know, once again, we're really getting deep, but hey, this is depth chart conversation. And you say, well, we saw what he could do against the Giants. Grant Calcaterra.
No. No.
Right.
You are so cruel.
I'm poking the bear. I am.
You are so cruel.
I mean, look at what this guy comes out of the woodworks, and all of a sudden. So don't sleep on some of these unknown commodities on the Philadelphia depth chart because they find a way to manufacture plays. So
there are a lot of Eagles who find ways to manufacture plays against the Giants.
Well said.
Don't restrict it to the tight end.
All right. Speaking of making plays, let's go now to wide receiver. And this is also, I think, one that, depending on how you look at it, could go in a variety of directions. But I think Philadelphia, it's fair to say, Paul, without anyone getting in their way,
correct,
and assuming that they stay healthy, is the unit to watch. You're talking about still A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Let's not forget, they acquired Jahan Dotson, who actually saw some production late in the regular season and in the playoffs. So I would not sleep on him. And they brought in Terrace Marshall from Las Vegas for a fourth guy. I think he could do a lot worse in terms of the mix. So Philadelphia, hands down, is still the best unit. I then went Dallas 2. I went Washington 3. I went Giants 4. I like the George Pickens acquisition, and now you put him with C.D. Lamb. If they didn't acquire George Pickens, I would have had Dallas much lower. But that changes the dynamics. Now you're talking about two guys on the sideline, and you could tell me Pickens has to improve his contested catch rate. It did dip last season, but you're going to give Dak those two guys, and you still have Jalen Tolbert, who showed some productive stretches last season when they had some injuries. I'll give Dallas a boost there. You mentioned Deebo Samuel now entering the fold. I know McLaurin is not happy with his contract, but I'm not taking that into consideration in terms of what I'm thinking production-wise. I know a lot of people would throw that in. And Noah Brown also I wouldn't sneeze at. And I think if we're going to talk about upside, I'm expecting Luke McCaffrey to be utilized more this season. I agree. Doesn't mean his snap's going to go skyrocket overwhelming, but I find it hard to believe for a third-round pick in 2024, they're going to leave him on the sideline. I think last season was an opportunity, watch, learn, absorb. And with the Giants, okay, they didn't make a huge splash at this position, so you're bringing back the group, and we could talk about Hyatt's usage with Russell Wilson. Okay, I need to see it. We know what Darius Slayton could do. Wan'Dale Robinson indicated yesterday, by the way, he thinks maybe he'll line up more on the outside, Paul. So, that could maybe add some different elements. But much like you said, offensive line, show me. I feel the same way about this wide receiver group.
You and I are totally exactly the same on this entire position. And that's exactly why the Giants are fourth. Show me. Maybe they could move up a spot if things go better or things go as planned or as projected. But as of now, it's a show me position. So I'm with you on all four of those spots. Nothing would please me more than to see Pickens flame out for Dallas. But his talent is ridiculous. I remember when he was coming out of school, I thought talent-wise, that guy was obviously one of my guys. I loved coming out of that draft in terms of his talent and ability. But as we all know, there's more than that when you bring George Pickens into the fold.
Sure.
So who knows? Who knows? We see what happens with Stephon Diggs from Minnesota to Buffalo and Houston and now New England. I mean, there's baggage there. Pickens has some baggage. Is that going to work? We'll see. If it does, boy, that's scary.
Yeah, well, because of the size and the length. And with Diggs, much like Pickens, yes, baggage, but production.
Yeah.
Okay, and production matters in this league.
No doubt. So anyway, I'm with you on this one. It was Philly, Dallas, Washington, Giants.
Okay, I'll have you take the lead at the running back position.
Well, no surprise, right? Philadelphia number 1. Got to go.
Went out on a limb there.
Yeah, really. I'm, just walking that pirate plane.
But in fairness, A.J. Dillon was a nice ad, by the way.
Well, yeah.
To compliment Barkley. No, I mean, because I think a lot of people
talk
Saquon, but A.J. Dillon, who was hurt last season, with those two thighs coming over and joining Saquon's thighs,
I know.
They may have the best thighs in the National Football League.
Yeah, and, I can't. I don't care that Eckler may not be what he was with the Chargers. It doesn't seem like they got the production out of him that he gave them out in California.
As a receiver, though, still was crafty.
He's very productive.
Sure.
Robinson, obviously, we know what he can do. And I have actually always liked him a little bit more than a lot of other people have. So I went Washington 2. I went Giants 3. And obviously, Dallas had to totally rebuild their running game, so they have to be fourth.
Just like the wide receiver position, we are mano-a-mano in sync here. No battle royale with respect to that. I mean, Dallas reconfigured Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders. It's going to be just a plethora of veterans, and you hope that, one guy maybe takes the lead, which is really what they did last season. To me, the run game for Dallas is dependent on the play of the offensive line. If the offensive line plays, they could be productive. Javonte Williams, unfortunately, he got hurt after a really good rookie year with Denver. So I still think there's a lot to like out of him. The question is, can he hold up?
Well, look, Miles Sanders, are we forgetting what a good back he was in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Before he left and went for some free agent money and didn't do anything with Carolina.
It just seemed like he fell out of the
I
mix in
don't
Carolina.
understand.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
I thought he was a really good back. Now, not necessarily
you.
all pro, but 1,000-yard rusher. They don't sneeze at those guys.
Yep.
They don't come in the Cracker Jack box. And if Miles Sanders can return himself to 1,000+ yard running back again this year for Dallas, it goes a long way into making them a better team.
And then the one guy I wanted to add with Washington is Jeremy McNichols, by the way, is their third running back who is a veteran, has been in the league since, I think, 17, variety of years. And they actually needed to utilize him when Eckler was a little bit banged up, as well as Brian Robinson. So the depth of Washington could actually be more impressive than even Philadelphia. But Philadelphia, the Eagles have the firepower. So that's why I am completely in sync with you in terms of how we see that. And that leads us to the quarterback position. And something tells me we're not going to see it the same way. I had a hard time with the quarterback position. I'll be honest with you. Because there's so many layers to this, Paul.
Correct.
It's the depth. It's the backup. If somebody gets hurt, how good do you feel about the guy coming in? Then clearly the position is more important than anything else. How do you rank the guy atop the depth chart? So there's a lot of ways to spin this.
Well, the other issue, too, when you talk about depth, obviously, the Giants are the only one of the teams that has a first-round draft pick who was in the waiting.
Correct, yeah. And I didn't have that influence me much.
Unfortunately,
hasn't gotten on the field. Yeah.
And I'm with you,
yeah.
But there is a lot of people, or are a lot of people, who, if asked this question, they're thinking Dart's going to play the last month of the season at least. There's a lot of people who believe that and think he should. And if you do, well, then that changes the way you calculate this.
You absolutely need to take that into consideration. But it's hard to project injuries, not that you ever wish that, and it's also hard to project playing time because that could be influenced by injuries.
I know.
So once again...
It's a very, very difficult one to list.
Yeah.
It really is.
And I'm sure there's going to be a level of disagreement, and that's fine. Healthy disagreement, there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm sure that you probably are not aligned with me. So I'll throw it out. I went Dallas, Philly, the Commanders, and the Giants. And the reason why I went Dallas is Dak, to me, is the most experienced, polished quarterback in the division. You can tell me all you want about postseason, this and that. We're looking at the regular season here. They have won a boatload of games with him at the controls. I like the acquisition of Joe Milton and his athleticism as an insurance policy more so than anything that Philadelphia has behind Jalen Hurts. I'm actually concerned about the Eagles' depth chart. If Jalen goes down, there's reason to be worried. I mean, you like Jameis backing up Russell Wilson in terms of what they have working for them more so. And the Commanders have Mariota still, and Mariota was in the system. But Jalen is a veteran quarterback that has been in this system, that has helped them win a Super Bowl. I mean, I'm not going to all of a sudden forget about all of that. So that's why I had to go Jalen over Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is a rookie from last year, and we know sophomore slumps are not crazy. So Jaden could take a step back. So that's why I had Washington move back a little bit. But the Mariota factor elevated them compared to what Philadelphia has behind Jalen Hurts.
No question about that.
I was working all of these things in conjunction. And while Russell Wilson has a wealth of experience, Russ is far older than any of the three other starting quarterbacks. He's new to the system. He's new to the coaching staff. So there's a little bit of risk involved in that. So, Paul, the reason why I'm going all over the place is I was weighing all of these things. I literally could have flipped a coin to determine what order I would have gone in.
I'm glad you feel that way.
But this is why I came to, once again, Dallas, Philly, Washington, Giants.
Well, you can keep flipping your coin because none of your four match my four.
And I knew that going in.
Not a single
As
one.
I was putting this together, I said there is no way Paul is going to be identical to me.
Not a single
I'm not
one.
surprised.
And this is the only position, I think, where we don't have a single
where
one
we were
match.
across the board, yeah.
Okay? I had to go with Washington, and I do believe that Daniels, once people have had a chance this offseason to look at the film, they will find ways to contain him better than they did last year. But
Which is what I'm banking on too.
yes, but Marcus Mariota, I think, is a decent, if not better than decent backup.
I'm with you.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that is part of this equation, right? It's the quarterback position.
Well, because you have to say, in the event the starter goes down,
right?
Do you feel the next guy up? It's not that he's going to put up fantasy.
No, but can they win? Can they win games?
Correct, exactly.
Can Marcus Mariota win games with this Commanders defense if he's got to play for a month? I think he can.
That's fair.
Okay?
Yep.
So I've got to go Washington number 1. Okay? Philadelphia is number 2 for me. I am not a Jalen Hurts fan. A year ago, people in Philadelphia wanted to run him out of town. There was rumors about how there's problems.
Oh, sure.
They're not happy with the play calling. Him and Sirianni are at odds, and there's going to be a fracture here. What happens a year later? Now he's the king of the city. He's up there dancing with the Rocky statue at the Museum of Art. Okay, it's crazy how that turned around. I've never been a Hurts fan, but do I appreciate the production that he gave them this year and was part of a team that did what it did and won a Super Bowl? Yes, I do. Does it help that he's got the 2 best receivers in the division? Does it help that he's got one of the top running backs in the universe?
The latter more so than the former.
And by the way, and he's got a stinking, unbelievable, rock-solid offensive line? Well, even if he goes down for a couple games, with that kind of support, can Tanner McKee hand the ball off 35 times and win a game?
Sure. Yeah. Or Kyle McCord, their 6th-round pick, yeah.
I'll tell you what, if they're playing the Giants during those 4 weeks that he's hurt, and they're playing the Giants twice, we know it's probably going to happen based on what's happened. And obviously, I got tongue-in-cheek on this one. I'm being a wise guy. But so I went Philadelphia too. Washington, Philadelphia. The Giants were clearly 3 for me. Russell Wilson's durability record is outstanding. I know he's 36 plus, but his durability track record is outstanding. He's smart. His body, if you watched him, go out there and get a look at this guy.
No, he is held up.
Built
There's no
like a
disputing
freaking,
that.
I don't want to say fullback, but he's built like a running back.
Yep.
He is in unbelievable shape, and I think that's one of the reasons why his durability has been so high. Jameis Winston's his backup. We know how erratic he can be, but as a backup, I don't mind him. He's got experience. He can throw the ball. He's won some games. I was never in favor of Winston being the starter here. We all know that. You felt the same. But as a backup, that's not a bad idea. And obviously, then, you got Dart waiting in the wings. And I don't think Jackson Dart should play this year, but if circumstances warrant, there's certainly a chance he could get in. So that room is definitely, for me, higher than the 4th place Dallas Cowboys. Joe Milton is still, even though I liked him as a dark horse quarterback before last year's draft, there's still too much of an unknown there. Will Grier does nothing for me as the number 3 if they even decide to keep him. And Dak Prescott, who I have never been a fan of and has never done anything in a big spot. By the way, here's the one thing, and every coach will tell you, availability is the most valuable thing you could have on the field. Dak Prescott has missed a minimum of 5 starts in 3 of the last 5 years. He's now 31 years old, and he has had a plethora of injuries that have busted him up. I am sorry. I am not convinced that he's going to start 15, 16 games this year. I'm not. Especially as you said that this offensive line that Dallas has, well, maybe they have ups, but right now they're still a little shaky.
Oh,
There's
sure.
still a little bit of a question mark.
We talked about that earlier. Yeah.
And we still don't know about their rebuilt running game. We still don't know about that yet. Prescott's going to take a beating again this year. 3 out of the last 5 years, he's missed at least 5 starts. If I'm a guy picking quarterbacks off a shelf, that's not good for me. So Dallas is 4th. When you combine that with the rest of the room, they're last for me.
Well, and that's why there's many different ways to look at this quarterback situation. I mean, once again, the difference maker at the end of the day was, as much as we do have to take depth and some of the guys on the chart into consideration, you're still operating that the team is going to go as far as the number 1 guy takes them.
You hope.
Okay? And Jalen, with that running game and his pedigree, and Dak and his regular season track record and experience, I'm not willing to dismiss that and put that to the side compared to Jaden Daniels, who may have more upside than anybody else, but Daniels has done it for one season. And once again, C.J. Stroud, I think, is the example of Stroud was solid in his rookie year, second year, because of some changes around him and the offensive line not playing as well.
That's where the backup comes in.
The league caught him up a little bit.
The Mariota factor kind of mutes that some for me.
It does, but in fairness, Mariota does not have nearly as much dynamic upside as Daniel. I mean, the offense does change, Paul.
It does, but
you move
can Mariota
from one
win
guy to the
games
other
with the rest of that lineup?
No, but he can, but they have to then tweak their usage.
No doubt.
Maybe Deebo Samuel becomes more of a runner. They lean on the running backs.
Anyway.
I would think, I just want to leave it at this. Philadelphia, your point is well taken that if Jalen went down, could Nick Sirianni just have an offense focused on Barkley and Dillon?
They're going to run that ball at least 35 times.
If there's any team built to absorb an injury for Jalen, it's Philadelphia. More so than any other teams in the division.
There's no way in those games without Hurts, they're throwing the ball 30 times. That's not happening.
Yeah.
Just not.
So that's another reason why, you take all of this in under the one umbrella of quarterback and you come up with 75 different calculations under the circumstances. All right, so that is our outlook of the NFC
Would you
East.
like the totals?
The totals, sure, yes.
All right.
Now you're going to give us the totals of what John and Matt had as well?
It's all on there.
Okay.
I can give it all.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Go through all of it, Paul. Pearson.
On offense, John had the Giants with 8 points, Philly with 20 points, Dallas with 10 points, Washington with 12 points. Paul, you have Giants with 10 points, Philadelphia with 16 points, Dallas with 9 points, Washington with 15 points. Matt Sitek, Giants with 6 points, Philly with 20 points, Dallas with 12, Washington with 12. And Lance, you had Giants 7 points, Philly 19 points, Dallas 12, Washington 12. On defense, John Schmelk, 16 points for the Giants, Philly had 15, Dallas 9, Washington 10. Paul, you had Giants 17, Philly 17, Dallas 9, Washington 7. Sitek had Giants 17, Philly 14, Dallas 9, Washington 10, and Lance, you had the Giants with 13, Philly 16, Dallas 13, and Washington 8. And the totals. John had the Giants with 29, Philly with 40, Dallas with 24, Washington with 27. Paul, you had the Giants with 33, Philadelphia with 40, Dallas with 21, Washington with 26. Matt Sitek had the Giants with 26, Philly with 40, Dallas with 26, Washington with 28, and Lance, you had the Giants with 23, Philly with 41, Dallas with 31, and Washington with 25.
So if I'm correct, and that was a lot of numbers,
yes.
Pearson, I think Paul is the one that had the Giants the highest in terms of the finish.
That is correct.
Well, I didn't do that to call you out. I just, so meaning the other three of us, we had them third or lower in terms of the tally.
The biggest difference was, I guess, special teams. Paul had them Giants at the best. Lance and Sitek had them at the worst. And then the tight ends was the other big difference.
So that
Paul, everyone else had the Giants last. Paul, you had them first.
Okay. So see, it just goes to show
two spots, and
just
took my whole thing out of whack.
It's different thinking.
Yeah. No. And that's why this exercise is interesting.
And the funny part about all of this is that we're doing it now when they're 90-man rosters. I think even all of us would admit we might have some different numbers if we did this at the 53 point.
Well, there could be acquisitions, too. Teams
could be acquisitions and injuries.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they bring in a different quarterback for the depth chart before the season starts, right? That's going to change your thinking, too.
Like I say, I hate to say it, but injuries, too. So we probably could have some things that are different, but this is what it is for now. And, hey, we move on.
All right, quick reminder before we wrap up. With another impactful drafted free agency class in the books, it means it's full steam ahead to the 2025 season. You can take your fandom to the next level with a Giants season ticket membership. Catch all the action at MetLife Stadium with an exciting home schedule on the horizon. With a membership, you'll stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days, with exclusive member access and benefits. To learn more about a New York Giants season ticket membership, visit Giants.com/tickets. As that is going to wrap up Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It's part of the Giants platforms everywhere and Giants.com/podcast as we welcome you into the Hackensack Meridian Health Keep Getting Better Giants podcast studio. Show presented by Cadillac. I want to make sure we get all the sponsors in. Paul, great dialogue as always, man.
Yeah, it was a very interesting hour. I told people beforehand on the Twitter, this is like a salad bar full of opinions. You could really get anything that you want. Lettuce, vegetables, fruit, you name it. It's all in the salad bar.
Various dressings, too. See, the competition was not complete without a food analogy from Paul Dottino. So now we can officially wrap up the
Can
program.
I have some croutons on the way out?
Croutons, too? Hey,
Thank you.
The whole interesting...
It is lunchtime, folks.
Yes, it is. Well, and speaking of that means we all need to eat, including Pearson. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest. We'll speak to you on Monday here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Have a good one.